Monday the 29th at 5:30 p.m. If I could have authorisation, please, to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July as a correct record of the proceedings. Thank you. Apologies for absence, Lisa.
There are none, Chair.
Additional agenda items.
There are none, Chair.
Urgent decisions.
There are none, Chair.
Disclosure of interests and dispensations. Receive any disclosures by members of disclosure or pecuniary interest and other registrable interests, non-registrable interests in matters on the agenda, and the nature of any interest and details of any dispensations obtained. Members are reminded of the need to repeat the declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. Richard? Yes? I'm sure I can be guided as to whether or not...
Yes, we've agreed that Councillor Thomas can be here but not speak. And the same for Councillor Cooper.
Thank you.
Okay, so the item that is before us this evening is agenda item 6, and where we're exclusion of press and public are exempt from this discussion and recording. So we can go straight into agenda item 6, which I think is being it's a report of Andrew Vallance, Deputy Chief Executive and 151 Officer, and the Cabinet members are Councillor McCourt and Councillor Girwan. So I wasn't sure who was presenting this report. Duncan. Right. Hi, Duncan.
Evening, Chair. Evening, members. Could I just clarify, Chair? Sorry. Are we in part 2 already, or no? Okay. So it was just to follow up with you, Chair, really to say that if we do need to talk about any of the detail in Appendix 2, which is the financial appendix, because of the commercial and sensitive nature of that information, we would need to go into part 2, but we'll try and keep it as much as we can in the public domain. I was going to talk you through the report at a high level, but just before I do that, there are a couple of areas I'd like to clarify just in terms of the recommendations, so we're all clear what we're considering tonight. They're not fundamental changes to anything we've got in front of us. It's really just to add a bit more clarity. So in terms of recommendation 3, we talk within that about a delegated authority to the shareholder representative. Just to be clear, that is the Chief Executive, Lorna Ford. Also in relation to 3B, we talk about the development facility, but elsewhere within the report, all the references are to the development loan agreement. So the development facility is the development loan agreement, but just for clarification. And similarly, under recommendation 4, I think it is, no, sorry, recommendation 6. Just bear with me a sec, sorry. There's a recommendation, no, it is recommendation 4. It talks about a delegation to officers. Again, for clarity, the officer making the decision on that will be the Deputy Chief Exec and the 151 officer. So it's just hopefully to make those 3 a bit clearer. I know, Chair, you've got a note for full council this evening that does make those clarifications. So just moving on to the actual high-level report. The focus this evening is to provide you all as members with an update on the progress of the Blackfriars Housing Development Scheme in Battle, and we're seeking a number of approvals and delegations from the Council to enable the delivery of 200 new dwellings by April 2027. Physical completion on site is expected by June 2027, at which point we are hoping that the units will have been disposed of and sold. So there's 2 main elements of the overall programme, just to remind people. So there's the enabling works and the infrastructure works, which are being delivered by Rotherham District Council. And then there's the housing delivery element, which is being delivered by Rother District Council Housing Company. So just in relation to the infrastructure works, the report considers the current position in relation to those works. Very high level recap. Scheme budget is around 21 million and it includes provision of a road network and utility provision for the site. So really the enabling works before the houses can be built. The project's been supported to date by Homes England, so we've got a grant of 8.7 million. But we still do have a gap in terms of funding on that scheme of around 8 million. So the council has applied to Homes England for a further grant drawdown, and we're still awaiting to hear the results of that application. And again, we're hoping to have that scheme completed by December of this year. So moving on to the housing provision, as I mentioned earlier, that's to be delivered by the housing company. There's two main options which the company are considering. Option one is to deliver 130 affordable homes with 70 open market sale units. And the estimated loan requirement from the council to deliver that is around £15 million. Option two is to deliver 200 units of open market sales. The estimated loan facility for that is around 37 million, so significantly more than option one. The recommendation within the report is that the council approves a loan facility to the housing company to support the delivery of option one. So again, to deliver 130 affordable homes in the 70 open market value units. That would significantly reduce the risk to the company and the council. It's a much lower loan facility by around 22 million when you compare it with option two. And there are various reasons for that. So the specification of 200 open market units is higher. Option two is looking to take around 4 years longer to dispose of all those houses, because under option one, there is an agreement to pre-sell some of those units to a registered provider. So the affordable units would be purchased very early on in the scheme. That then enables the company to have cash flow benefits from those disposals, which means they have less borrowing and less interest costs. As we've mentioned, there's a detailed confidential appendix as Appendix 2. In terms of option 2, which is the full open market sales, I'm not expecting those to complete until 2031. So as I mentioned, that's around 4 years longer than option 1. Just very briefly before I finish, Chair, again, there are significant social benefits and environmental benefits brought about by this scheme. I know back in November we were having to consider just having the open market sales, but we've now been able to bring the affordable position back for consideration, which is positive. But we will be building, or the company will be building these units to high environmental standards. So they're looking at including air source heat pumps, electric vehicle charging points and solar panels. There will also be an additional benefit in terms of provision of affordable housing for local people. So that will support the local economy and skills development. And the scheme will align with the council plan and also the climate strategy. There'll be a knock-on benefit to our temporary accommodation costs, which have tripled over the last 4 years and now sit at around £2 million. And this will provide additional support for that as well. So that's where I'd like to leave it, Chair, at the moment. There are a number of officers on the call this evening, so happy to take questions, and they'll probably be passed to the most relevant officer to try and address those if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Duncan. Are there any questions? Catherine, Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you. Not a question, because the report is very clear, but a comment. And I'm just very pleased this is going to be going ahead. But then I was very pleased several years ago when they were going to be living in these houses in January 24. However, I think we're making progress slowly. I'm particularly glad that the affordable housing is back, because quite honestly, there are many people in Battle who didn't believe us when we said, hang on, it hasn't gone forever. So I'm glad to see it written down that we are thinking about affordable housing and that it will probably be coming back, because that is what we need. Hopefully, although I do accept we need a lot of temporary accommodation as well, hopefully most of the affordable housing will go to people who need it as permanent housing, and there'll be much less put aside for temporary accommodation, although I do understand the need for that. So looking forward to seeing the first front door crossed by people going to live in the houses. Thank you.
I think we'd all share those sentiments. Rory, Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Doug. No, it's just, if we recall back in November, the position was a lot more bleak than this. So I'm pleased that there's a major turnaround, thanks to the officers and everybody who's been involved, and to Richard and his people as well. I mean, back then in November, we were talking about no affordable housing whatsoever, and running, if my memory serves me right, a deficit of about 7.9 million at that time. So to turn that around and to hopefully achieve 130 genuinely affordable housing, I would say as well, because affordable housing is a package, as we know, can be up to 80% of market rent, which is, in this climate, in this area, is not really that affordable. So I do welcome it. I think it's great that we've got this position. We have nearly 2,000 people on our waiting list, so we do need to house people, and this can only be good news. And I would hope that members across the divide, the political divide, would support it, because I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we would all concur with that. Are there any other points that everybody made? Councillor Lake.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see that the 130 affordable houses are now back on the agenda, and obviously will be renegotiated, which obviously helped to offset the money we pay rates. I've read in the actual documentation, it says maximum value of 15 million loan. There's a possibility that that's going to rise to 18.75. And it's never actually says, it just says 25% of the loan we could call on for contingency. It's a little bit misleading in my eyes that perhaps the 3.75 should have been mentioned so people are aware that it could rise to 18.75. Hopefully we will get the Homes England loan coming of 8 million. If not, the loss value is £8 million. I presume that Rother will take that on board and not the housing company.
I'll leave that with Duncan, who's nodding to respond. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. At the moment, as we stand, the infrastructure project has the £8 million deficit. That is funded by council resources. If Homes England were to come forward with that additional grant, we would then switch that and we would be able to use those resources elsewhere. So that charge will not go to the housing company.
Thank you for that. No further questions? No, there's no other hands up externally. I can't see that, but no, that's fine. Yeah, I think we all welcome this. I think that in November 2023, it was a rather gloomy prospect going forward. I think prior to that, there was this expectation of seeing real progress, but we did have a global pandemic. We did have all other things going on. It was a very difficult 3 or 4 year period as an authority. But I think we've really done very, very well. I think it's a direct result of the expert skills that we brought in the housing company through Neil Tickle. I think that the housing company board has been well organised and well run by Councillor Thomas, and thank you for that, Richard, for all that you've put into it. And then, of course, the support we've had from officers who've basically been able to produce this report this evening, which is very, very satisfying to receive. And I'm sure that all members would want to make sure that we now push on and that we're crossing over front door terraces or whatever it is into the future. So thank you very much indeed. So do I get, I think the report is for just recommendation. And is someone going to move this report? Thank you very much. And those in second and those in favour, that's unanimous, and that takes us to where we need to be now. Are we looking at Appendix 2 in so much as that, are there any points in there that need clarification at all? No? No. So that concludes this part of the business, and we can close this part of the proceedings. Yeah. 17 something.